Good evening. You're listening live to the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you 7 miles from the Canadian border, 12 miles west, in a little town called, wait a minute. No, I'm in Pine Hills in the Palace in the Xtreme Studios. Like a Professor Pixel, the young 20-something, joining me here is one of our first broadcasts together here in 2025, doing the viewer's poll choice of television shows. And of course, the winner, Pixel, as I know you were getting back in town, getting reestablished here, is Twin Peaks. The choices were, just to do a kind of review, Hysteria, Twin Peaks, and The Penguin. Now, Pixel, I know that you and I have covered every single episode of Twin Peaks, season 1, 2, and of course The Return, which is season 3, as well as Fire. Walk with me, and we'll start jumping that here in a moment, but I wanted to take a moment as people jumped into the chat here to kind of just mention the poll and what we're doing here on the Xtreme Movie Show. And of course, we put a poll up usually Tuesday nights, and the poll winner is what we've been going with on Sunday nights. So with our schedules and all that, the three of us, I said I was going to go solo, and you happen to be available. I want to talk about some TV shows that I thought were actually pretty good this year. So quickly, I'll go through them, and then we'll dive into Twin Peaks. I know it's going to be an interesting discussion. Hysteria is a show I mentioned briefly to some viewers about how they captured a really good job of this 80s satanic panic thing. It's on Netflix, where a high school band actually says, you know what? If people are hating on Dungeons and Dragons and this whole satanic thing and all that, let's lean into that little bit heavy metal thing so we can get noticed. And of course, stuff's going on. So I hate that term horror comedy, but I thought it was pretty decent. And of course, Bruce Campbell's in it to add a nice little touch to it, some credence. But overall, it's not bad for what it's supposed to be and all that too. So I was curious. We haven't talked in a while. Are you even aware of the show, or have you seen it?
No. This is the first I'm hearing of it.
Okay. Yeah, it's disappointing because some niche shows that Netflix had, like Archive 81, that I absolutely love, got canceled and aren't going to be coming back. Or was it Manhunters or Mindhunters? I think 2 seasons of serial killer chasing 10 years ago. God, that was so good. Well, the other show that I thought honestly is the best show I will say in 2024 that I saw, and admittedly, I don't watch as much TV as some people do, and I don't watch all the shows because or whatever. But the one I got drawn into, and I say this because I am not like you guys on the Geeky Puppet Show where I review comics and those sorts of things. I'm not big into all that, but it's Penguin with Colin Farrell. And this is one of those few shows where, to me, everything people were saying about the good acting, the crazy woman in it, taking the viewer through an adult drama that just happens to have a character called the Penguin, and kind of like how he becomes the Penguin, kind of like his origin story, sort of, kind of, in a way. And I don't know enough facts to say how real it was. I thought it was fantastic, and I can't keep my eyes off Colin Farrell. Now, Penguin, have you seen it?
I got to see like 2 episodes, and then I fell behind, and I just haven't finished it. But the 2 episodes I did see, they were great. Like, it's just a matter of finding time to sit down and watch things, and I haven't had a lot.
Yeah, it's a show that surprised me because I've said this before, that when you have a TV show that can be written for everybody, it's written for no one, and we all have our philosophies and what we like, don't like, and what works and doesn't, and they're not always the same. And I think for Penguin, they treated, I think, the source material, I assume, with some reverence. They didn't totally change it, like, say, in Craven the Hunter or other things that are out there. And I just think his performance, the prosthetics, the lack of a lot of CGI, at least with a lot of the scenes, is great. And it's going to fall with something that we're going to talk about here between Twin Peaks in a moment. And I've always said that you can have characters that are in interesting dilemmas. Action speaks more than the talking. But ultimately, I think film, television is visual. You can watch something like in a foreign language, and the act of you having to pay attention to their subtitles or whatever language they're in, like their French, Spanish, whatever it is, you almost think that the actors are better than what they are because you have to pay attention to how they're emoting, right? And we've said before that with our review of Columbo 2 seasons in, it's some fantastic writing and great stuff. Particularly that first season is outstanding. I'm going to go back to the 80s here as an 80s based channel and make the claim that the way Michael Mann directed Thief and some other stuff, when he hit Miami Vice in 1984, that kind of changed a lot of the way TV was done after that. Not only did they include music in there that was very expensive for the time for licensing rights, it was pop culture. The way they shot it, it was more of a mood, it was more of an atmosphere, it was more of an experience while you're watching it. And if you were watching it live at the time, it felt like that time. So I know that you and I have talked about some TV shows that maybe we were hit or miss on, or didn't agree on some stuff too. And one of the things we always talk about is sometimes the acting or the character, what we're looking forward to. So bringing it round to Twin Peaks. When this show came on, people didn't know what to expect because it was David Lynch, who's kind of weird. It's the late 80s. Things are getting ready to change into the gloomy 90s, right? No, well, it's TV. and Lynch doing TV was a big deal at the time. You know, some people would say his version of Dune's better than the last two Dennis movies, which, you know, it's a different kind of conversation. But you said, hey, Rob, I'd like to watch Twin Peaks. I haven't seen it. I've heard things about it. It seems kind of odd and weird. I will say that the writing is on track with Mark Frost because he did Hill Street Blues, as well as Lynch himself's involved in it. But this is a combination of a small town soap opera. It's dark and sinister. It's got an adult theme to it. Later on, it's got some supernatural elements and all that. It can be a bit philosophical, and it's a bit goofy. I think it's like a deconstruction. There's a lot to say about it. Before I keep rambling, I'd like to pause for a few moments and say to you, looking back on now over 3 years ago when we started doing all of that, I believe it was a first watch. Correct me if I'm wrong. Tell me what your initial thoughts going into watching that season 1 experience was, and now reflecting on it, what comes to mind?
I mean, I do recall asking about doing that because we were looking for a new show after a while. What had we done? We had done Haven, and I wasn't the biggest fan of that. But I wanted something that had that feeling of something small town, kept away, tucked away, but something I've heard about. And you always hear about Twin Peaks. Twin Peaks has a cult following. And so like, okay, I want to give this a try. Why don't we do a review of that? I've never seen it. You said you had, in fact, seen it years ago when it had first come out, but you hadn't seen it in years. So yeah, no, that sounded interesting. And I remember just being swept away by that pilot. It's basically a full movie, hour and a half. You're sitting there and you were sucked in. It doesn't feel like it because it goes on and it takes you through. You aren't really resting, but the characters breathe. I still remember Dale Cooper looking at that waitress saying, "Excuse me, this is a damn fine cup of coffee." And I just, it's something that sticks with me. This season is astounding. It is one of the best seasons of television.
Yeah, it was a strike shortened season. I think something was going on at the time that I think we got into Desert Storm maybe a little bit later going into season 2. I'm not quite sure all the specifics. I'd have to actually research it. But I think the thing that's amazing is that when we talk about television, I always go back to storytelling. And storytelling to me is, you think of Joseph Campbell, the hero's myth, everybody kind of has a similar story. It's just a question of which culture you're in and the details about it. And, we see that with superheroes in their own way, how, you've got your Norse ones like Thor, and then you've got your other ones, and, all that stuff's kind of cool. But the everyman story I like to talk about is like The Prisoner, for example. That was a philosophical kind of show that unfortunately had a few episodes tucked into it that probably didn't make it as great as it could have been if they were taken out. But then with Quinn Martin back in the 60s, we talked about other shows, Mission Impossible at the time, that was just formulaic, right? It was just same episode almost every single time, right? But when we talk about Quinn Martin, we talk about a guy that said in the 60s, hey, here's a guy that did The Invaders. It's about a guy that's chasing aliens. So he'd show up in a different town. In the 70s, that would be The Incredible Hulk. You had The Fugitive. What's the question? Is he going to catch the one-armed man? Then later on in the 80s, it was Who Shot JR, going from the 70s into the 80s. Well, of course, Twin Peaks is Who Killed Laura Palmer. And the whole idea here is, instead of it just being sort of this small town thing like I've mentioned Stephen King will do, where everybody has a bit of a backstory and the themes that adults get into, sex, drugs, murder, corruption, prostitution, whatever they may be, generally, there's no shying away from that in this. And that's what I like about it. It treats you as a viewer like you can understand what's going on, but it unfolds. And in addition to that, there's a murder mystery. And of course, there's the subplots too. And what I like about it is you get sucked into something. If you're watching that opening for 2 minutes with the bird and the sawmill and all that, that was different. The one thing about the show that bugs some people when they say I don't get it is they're like, why does it take so fucking long to get to where we're going? Well, that's the point. They never wanted to say who the killer was. And I'm not going to in this particular podcast because it's like key to the whole idea that, it was a decent show. It was getting a cult following. It was pretty hot, especially on reruns. That, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? Because now the networks picked it up and they demanded they show the killer, and it just kind of killed it after that. Because there's some weird stuff in season 2. I think you'll agree on. But yeah. I just love the feeling watching. Every time I watch, it's not one where I go, oh, okay, I know this line's coming or that's coming. I do feel like I'm watching it almost again for the first time. I just happen to know, hey, this is the scene where the girl's walking across the train tracks, Ronette Pulaski. Okay, here's the scene where he's gonna find the missing clue while he's doing, I hate to say it, the autopsy, right? But you find out this cheerleader girl that everybody loves in this small town, she's not who she seems, and there's a lot of levels to it. And this, by all intents and purposes, was probably one of the last really great TV shows, I think, written this way. I mean, I don't know how you feel about with writing today in TV shows, but a lot of stuff's pretty one note and sitcoms and laugh tracks. This show is definitely not that.
No, no. The writing is really strong, and yeah, I'm going to go ahead and touch upon what you said earlier about it can be a little bit goofy sometimes, but even then, you feel like it's something that you don't want taken out. When you have this show, you have so many moments that add to each person, right from the fish in the percolator. You have something special, from the goofy moments to the serious ones, and there are a lot of serious moments. When that music comes in to let you know that this scene is supposed to chill you, it does its job. Like, just like the theme song is mystifying, going in, pulling you in. You feel that warmth, that heart, the love they felt.
It starts off and you're drawn in. You got an old guy that's going to go, he's telling his wife, hey, I'm going fishing. I mean, they're obviously a middle-aged to older couple. She could give her ass about him, and she's a great actress too. I won't get into all the specifics. And then the guy's not known for too much, but he goes out and he's fishing. I think he sees something, and right there on the shore outside their cabin, there's this giant log there that got brought in by the tide or whatever like that. There's a big thing of plastic, and he goes and he looks at it and he reacts, and he calls up the Sheriff Truman, as it were, who comes down there with I think it's Andy, one of his main deputy, one of them.
Oh my God,
and he's like, she's dead, wrapped in plastic. So there's these lot of little things that you remember. And then to your point, what I appreciate about it is I'm drawn on, like, oh my God, what's going on here? Oh, it's the homecoming girl. And then that, just the fact that it's the homecoming girl, the homecoming queen and all that getting murdered, like, oh shit, got to pay attention to that. Now we're, I think, a little older and cynical after 30 plus years, where we're like, we know she probably had an OnlyFans account. She's probably this or that or whatever. But back then it was like in a small town where everybody knew everybody. No matter if you fooled around, smoked a little dope, did a little drugs, partied or whatever like that, you were still the homecoming queen. Everybody still knew you, right? And the fact that we find out everything about her is not what you expect out of the homecoming queen, right? It's that's interesting in itself. But then you get distracted by the weight, the gravity, and these things, which is important. Like where the guy goes to make coffee because coffee is like a running gag in here, and he accidentally put the fish in there. I mean, it's stuff that you're like, you don't think you're sucked in till you get something stupid like that.
And it's like Desert Rose is saying that the theme song is fantastic. Yeah, no, that's what I mean, because Laura's theme, it shows that warmth that people thought they felt for her, and then the darkness at the end that she had, and that gets exposed as you're watching the show. And then we haven't even talked about our best boy, our favorite, Mr. Dale Cooper, other than the cup of coffee.
Todd McLaughlin, yep. Go ahead. He's your character.
Fantastic.
For season 2, I would talk about Harold and the saltines and apple butter, the orchid grower, but we're not going there this little stream.
No. Dale, he's the outsider. He's from the FBI. He comes on in and he falls in love with this town. Everything about it. He wants to live here. You can tell by the end. He's happy. He's got something going on with an of-age girl. Don't ask. And he's so lovable. It's hard to have characters that are just like that, just so pure and bright and shiny. But Dale is absolutely one of those.
I think too, when Dale shows up on the scene, being an outsider, I think that's a critical point, because things that happen in a small town usually seem to be different than what happens in the big town. And as we would find out in season 3, The Return, when we talk about, that's not true. And I think we disagreed a little bit about the entire setup of those 16, 17, 18 episodes, wherever they were. But that being said, it shows, hey, you take somebody from the outside, you have somebody fish out of water that has to kind of figure out what's going on, and exposes some things. Because in small towns, people have their secrets. People kind of shut up. They're not keen to warm up to outsiders, especially when they're people in positions of power. Like when, there's a scene where they're getting ready to go look at Roman Pulaski, and he stops in the hallway and he says, "Sheriff, we might as well come to have this conversation right now. It seems like when people find out the FBI involved, they don't want to act with us, but understand that we're on the scene, we're working for you." And it's like, not a problem. I'm glad you're here. And like, okay, great. And it's weird because it's like he's not trying to bully him or befriend him, but he's supposed to be this FBI guy that we're supposed to take seriously, but he's a bit of a goof. And as we'll find out in a few episodes here, he relies on weird spiritual, mystical bullshit rather than typical FBI nonsense to kind of get him through. And that's not what the FBI does, right? But for the show, it works, especially with what happens later on. So it's interesting because you have this element of darkness, and you're like, well, where does the darkness come from? Is it a person? Is it a place? Is it a thing? Is it in everybody? Is it just because we're very north of the latitude and everybody's depressed all the time? What is he trying to say here? Because this is not a fun show. It's not happy. There's people that have relationships, but there's a problem in each one of them. None of them are truly 100%. Even the fact that Dale Cooper gets an 18-year-old high school admirer and all that too. Everybody wanted to see her and him hook up back in the day. Now you might find that gross, but that was the one thing. It just, all these characters are true to what they would be like when they're 17, 18, years old. I just think it's a smart way to introduce, and I think the word I'm looking for here is patient.
Is what?
Patient. They take their time
Oh.
undoing the different levels of what's going on. As we find out in season 2, there's a lot more stuff here, right? When you find out what the answer is in season 1, kind of, sorta, early season 2, it makes sense. And it's right there in front of you on a rewatch going, all the clues are right there to solve it. It's not like, oh my God, I had no idea from the very beginning. It should be very obvious.
Yes, no, you're very right. Even with the first season, it's a limited number of episodes. You cannot get this quality in 8 episodes. Well, you do get some good quality, rarely in 8 episodes, but you can't usually find this much quality, this much given in 8 episodes nowadays. I think, I'm trying to think. Like you brought up Peg 1. That was what? That was 8 episodes this year, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that went ahead, and you were raving about it, which was surprising to me because
I don't rave too often.
Like, you're not a comic book fan. You don't have anything drawing you towards it except Colin Farrell. And then you went on. You gave it more support than I heard Bankman give it. He didn't even try. You can find gems out there, but Twin Peaks is this gem out of time now.
It's there was a band in the 80s that was somewhat progressive in the rock and roll scene called Queensryche, and they had a concept album. So unlike Mr. Bada, which, if you're a Styx fan, that kind of killed the band, and a lot of people didn't take him seriously after that. It was an idea that'd been around a little bit, but Queensryche did this album, and they had a song on there that has a line in there, "There's no happy endings like they always promised." It's so cynical sounding. This show does not have a happy ending. It's not supposed to. It just kind of continues. So when we talk about season 3 later on, we go, well, how would they do it? What actors are still alive or actresses? Because there's, been some things going on. Who could or couldn't make those commitments? What happens to Dale? What happens to all these kinds of things? And I will say this, for all the mess that some people might not like about season 2, there's some good stuff, some awful stuff, some goofy, stupid stuff. What is kind of cool is that somehow, I got this. And it just makes it work. And I think that's a testament to the ability of just allowing you to see stuff happen, and you don't have to think about it too much. That's the beauty of it. There's a lot of jazzy music in here that kind of keeps you in that mood. There's the haunting keyboard stuff. But actually, if you think about it, it's a pretty minimalist score. There's not a lot of talkity talk going on either. I've said more in the past 15 minutes than they do in probably the whole show as far as number of words. It's just one that you see what happens, and you go, wait a minute. If this girl died within the first minute of the show, what's going to happen next? Oh, you hear on the background that there was another unrelated incident that missing the same night, Renette Pulaski. And then a little bit later, you see her coming across the train tracks. That's a phenomenal shot. It's just like, my God, he just keeps peppering you with all these hammers coming at you with all this dread and panic and fear. But then when they get ready to take the photographs of her at the beginning, you get Andy, who's this tall, lanky, imposing kind of guy, kind of quiet, and he just starts busting out crying because he's a simp. He's really, emotionally kind of a wreck. He's just really sensitive. There's nothing wrong with that, but it's atypical of what you would expect. And then, of course, he's got a relationship going on with Lucy, who's tremendous as the secretary, right? Because every time we see her, you get just enough of her breaking up whatever the big thing is on the scene or whatever the development is before it moves on to it. Or you get donuts or coffee or pie or something like it. Or what's the one scene where him and Sheriff Truman are talking in there and all the different animals in there, and the one kind of like stops, almost pecks his face. I'm like, that's got to be a fake, or not fake, but unrehearsed, and they just left it in, right?
Yes. Pardon me. And I always remember them asking, get the donuts, and they have full spread there. And then they got cut off. They didn't even get to enjoy any of them because they had to go chase something. And it also had a great way of just mystifying you.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
The entire dream sequence that you get with Dale at the end of that first episode,
mm-hmm.
with the what do you say, vertically
challenged or vertically enhanced individual, because we see both.
Yes, that's true. You get both. But we don't care about calling the one the giant. That's fine. And then you get Laura, and she's speaking backwards, and her arm's been back. But it's something that sticks with you. Yeah. That's what this show does. It goes ahead and drives itself into your mind, and you won't stop thinking about it. I have a friend that I stream with, Chris, over on a Doctor Who channel, and he once a year rewatches all of Twin Peaks.
Really?
Yep. He chooses a day, and he's like, well, it's time. I'm going to rewatch all of Twin Peaks.
It's a vibe, and it's interesting because, like, looking up through the comments here, I talked about how X-Files is kind of goofy, and RDV's disagreeing with me, saying Mulder doesn't cross-dress. That's a reference for David Duchovny. Has a character that plays a cross-dresser in it that you go, what the hell? I think that's season 2, though. It could be season 1. I can't recall off the top of my head, but I honestly don't believe David Lynch put that in there as a goof, like making fun of somebody that acts in a certain way, or however you would describe it in today's terminology, right? I think it was more of a David Duchovny sort of decision or input on the role. I may be wrong on that, but it was different at the time. Very, very different. And again, it kind of throws you off. So it's hard for you to feel settled into any particular thing. And then Sean mentioning how the FBI had studied ESP for decades, absolutely 100% true. And I mentioned how when we reviewed one of Frank Sinatra's better roles there too, where he plays the assassin, the Manchurian Candidate, what that actually means, where it comes from. We talked about how with World War I going into World War II, the whole super soldier thing and serum and drugs and psychedelics, and how some of that stuff kind of got into Hollywood a little bit as far as the ideas and what they could or couldn't do. It was interesting because a lot of that was kept from the common person here in America, and we have a lot of international viewers too, especially because all the martial arts films that we've done. But one of the things that pops up in my mind is it wasn't until the 60s with the counterculture and a distrust of big government or any government that you had the Warren Commission in the 70s release a lot of, at the time, classified documents on like Pargic paperclip on this and that. So there was this kind of interest in, not the supposed feel-good post-work and, positive look at America, which was a legitimate thing. I think in some ways people make fun of the A's, or people in the A's tried to mock that, thinking it was stupid or it was overdone, and I get it. I think Lynch has just poking fun at some ideas here, but the thing with X-Files is it's a nice little kind of whodunit. It's like a scientifical moonlighting, if you will. And they deal with some stuff like that, but then they do the alien thing and all that, and that became kind of like so hot in the 90s with 150-pound soaking wet vampires and the goth and grunge thing, where things really got kind of morbid in a not very serious way. It's that's why I say Millennium, who Mark Frost is involved, I think, in all three of these. He saved the best for last of the Millennium as far as the going deep and dark, where you're like, man, this is some heavy shit. But whatever you like is what you like, and that's the interesting thing, is that when this came out, I'm telling you, everybody was talking about what would happen, because not only do we find out this girl's murdered, so she's not even the main character, but she's not who she says she is. She's involved in some nasty stuff. It's a small town. There's drug dealing going on. There's the crazy wife who has the missing eye, or with the eye patch, who's somehow going batshit over like the curtain rods or rollers and all that. And then you have the super hot married to an older guy waitress at the diner, who's the quarterback's side piece, and she's getting her ass beat on a daily basis, and her husband's running drugs. I mean, it's not pretty, and you find all this out kind of early on, and you hear about it, but then you see it, and then you watch it develop. So I like that, because he's kind of basically like saying, yeah, this is going to get dark, and I'm going to show it to you, and you're like, yeah, okay, do it. And then you're like, well, shit, Lynch, you did it. I mean, I give him credit for that, because as RDV and I talk about with 80s movies, because we talk about it a lot, it's a time to be overly patriotic, overly excessive, really saccharine, sweet kind of popcorn movies. Not a lot of necessarily deep movies. I'm not saying there weren't good movies or fun movies, and I think you got to be entertaining is the key thing, but that sense of dread just didn't exist when it came to primetime television.
No, and it also it also has other characters that it goes ahead and leans on and gives you thoughts. Okay, are we taking this turn, like with the psychiatrist that Laura had? Oh, he left a journal, and why was he keeping the journal a secret? It's not because it's not. It ends up being not because he killed her. It was because he was obsessed with her, but not to the point where they had to get involved. But it's one of those things that go ahead and they're able to take these characters and make you just drawn in whenever they're on the screen, except Nadine. I didn't like Nadine. That's what I'm going to say right now, actually. Her and her curtains, I couldn't. And Hank should have ended it a long time ago.
But here's the thing. Hank is this decent white guy, runs a gas station. His wife's the crazy one, right, with the curtain rods.
Yes.
But you find out why they're together, and it fits. And you know what? The way they're together makes sense. Not in a throwaway, stupid kind of way, but a way where like, yeah, I kind of can see it. And, what do you do? How do you do it? Are you really going to leave? Or you're not? What's going to happen? You just don't know, right? I mean, seriously, all these side characters, they give some meat and potatoes to, at least in season 2. No doubt about it.
Yeah, no.
Aaron Moore in chat's basically saying he could write poetry about Madgen Amick's hair. Yeah, I remember her in that werewolf movie or whatever it was with I think the Stephen King short, the kind of Bond, but I think she was in that too. And I was like, my goodness, yeah, she's what I would call a natural beauty. I think she was on was it that Archie show or whatever it was a while back or something. I don't know what she's doing now, but my God, and he's saying that his parents would let him watch it. It was really all about how is this going to be different than some of the big shows that were out there, like Dallas or Falcon's Crest or some of the soap operas that you would have in the evening as opposed to the daytime stuff. So those were the more ones. Like there's one out called by Tyler Sheridan, who's like 30 shows in production, and it's closer to 30 than 15 probably. But we reviewed Tulsa King with Sylvester Stallone. Why? Because we're Tulsa King fans. That show's probably a little different than Yellowstone, some of the others. I started watching Yellowstone, but I couldn't really emotionally get attached to anybody, so I stopped it. But he's got the show called Landman out there now, which has Billy Bob Thornton as the guy that works for the oil company. And at least the first episode or two, you can kind of see where he's making it seem a little different than his other shows. And it's interesting because it's different, because nothing's really kind of tackled that. Well, how exactly do you get an oil lease? How do you deal with drug dealers? How do you, and that's what drama is, right? I mean, mafia stuff's always kind of cool, but how much of it can you do that without it being redundant? If you watched One Night in Bangkok, like, which unfortunately I had on the other night, you realize, man, Collateral's great. Why did I watch this piece of shit movie? But yeah, it's just, if you grew up listening to Zeppelin, Floyd, Sabbath, I have no idea why you weren't allowed to watch Twin Peaks, but maybe, to Aaron's parents' thought, it had a little bit of that satanic stuff into it, a little touch of the supernatural, as it were. And all I can say is teenagers knew what it was, didn't really care to it, didn't really get sucked into it, but it was a minor thing. Hence the reason why I put Hysteria on the poll, as well as Penguin being very good and Twin Peaks here. Other Twin Peaks thoughts for season 1, sir?
Other thoughts. I'm trying to think about any relationship that I want to highlight on, and I suppose we could talk about another one of the weaker elements of the show.
The name is James.
James is the weak element, yes.
I'm glad you brought it up, because I was actually going to.
Yeah, because he's a punk. I don't like him. I don't like anything that he's done. And he was involved with Laura, and then he has this whole thing. Thankfully, we don't get that god-awful song in this season.
Just You. Let me talk to you about Just You, sir, and James.
No, I can't talk about
James. Is a good-looking guy. He's not just massively attractive looking like the football player is Bobby, right? Because Bobby's aged well. He appears in The Return in season 3. He's a good-looking guy, right?
Bobby's great.
He is. I like Bobby a lot.
He's a good punk.
He's a good punk. James is a bad punk.
On screen.
But here's why he's a bad punk.
And go, oh my God, get him off. I don't care.
So all the stuff we said about Lucy, or like the fish in a percolator and other little things that happen up, it's just, I think honestly, James is intentionally supposed to be that. So James is like the guy on the side of both these ladies, because it turns out eventually he was seeing her on the side, but he's starting to get the feels for, or I should say, her best friend is starting to get the feels for him. But he realizes, because he's not stupid, that early on, holy shit, everybody's going to pin this on me. And he actually sees the bigger picture of all these things going on. So even though he's riding his motorcycle and he's got the perpetually kind of, let me punch you in the face sort of sad look on his face, I think he's very effective what his character's supposed to be. It's like the, Toby or whatever like that out of The Office. He's the guy you're not supposed to like and you just want to beat the shit out of, just because he's annoying. He's so effective at that role. And I think the whole thing with him serenading, with the Just You and all that was intentionally supposed to be bad. I think Lynch is kind of like mocking us as whatever. And this is what I mean by, I think he's not building up what these serious dramas are supposed to be. He's kind of poking fun at him a little bit, but since it's dark subject material, he's got to lighten it up. And I think this is his way of making us go, yeah, let me put a character in here that everyone's going to really, really hate. A side character that's kind of like a glue piece that can explain some of the relationships, because you need that. And I think that's what he served here. So I agree with you. I hate him. Everybody hated him. Nobody's ever liked him and all that. But I think, as an actor, he probably goes, hey, that role, James, nobody liked. I nailed it. I crushed it, because he did. Let's be honest.
No, absolutely. I mean, I'm not blaming the actor for us not liking the character. He was just really cool. But on the contrast, you do feel for Donna, because she was always kind of covering for Laura, Laura, what are you doing? Why are you doing this? Trying to pull her back towards the light. Even though she's got some problems herself, she had nothing like that. Yeah, I should just get on my bike and go. Thank you, Aaron.
That's tremendous. That was so good. Can I buy you a coffee or anything? No, I should just get on my bike and go. Yeah, you should, and never show up. And damn it, when he shows up, that's change the channel heat. It's like, all right, I'm gonna go top off my coffee or drink or go get some snacks or whatever.
Remember in season 2 when they went ahead and gave him this whole bullshit storyline about him driving off because he got hideaway, and he goes ahead and gets involved, huh?
I loved it. I thought it was tremendous. Get involved with a scary rich woman. Oh yeah, give me more James, please.
No, no, evil, despicable. How dare you?
No, what was worse was you had no idea what to make of it because I think it was a play on James, even though I think we do see James at the last few episodes in season 3. But in season 3, when they have the one current little scrawny comic show up and he's supposed to be rebel without a cause with his parents, and you're like, what the fuck is this, Rob? And I'm trying to explain it to you, and the fact that you had no idea is even funnier than what's going on. It's like that's James for the new current generation. He's got the fucking beret on and his stupid motorcycle, talking like an idiot. I give that guy a lot of
Oh
credit.
my god, you mean what's his name? Oh my gosh, what is it from? From
Sarah, right?
Huh?
Is it Michael Sarah? Is that his name?
Yes. Oh my god, he's awful. Oh god.
But here's the thing: we know honestly, James is not a bad dude. We know everybody's kind of involved in some things. Some are better than others. But one of the things I do like about the show is that it's when I watched it when I was younger in the 80s, I thought, okay, this is kind of cool. I didn't pay too much attention to the adult like stuff because frankly, I could give a rat's ass about, an Asian somehow coming over, getting a mill and her going to war with, the older lady that's the wife of the guy that we saw go fishing, right? But I liked their relationship because she hated him, he loved her, and he knew it, and he put up with her, and she was just a complete bitch. And she's so fantastic that when I watched it again with you a few years back, I was like, wow, that was more interesting in a way because I could appreciate some of the nuances of what it's like to be, say, a married person or older, or be running a business and how you deal with things, all that. And it's not central to the story, but it gives these characters something because they all in some way have a relationship with somebody that you do not know early on that makes you reconsider what your initial judgment was about them. I think that's one of the key things to Twin Peaks is this. Look, I've known people that I just go, man, this guy sounds like an asshole. He's good looking, he's tall, he's handsome, he's got great teeth, shiny hair, he smiles well, he's got great parents. He must be an asshole, he must be doing drugs, he must be a bum. And then I meet the guy and I'm like, God, I want to hate the guy, but I can't because he is actually pretty kind of cool. And we're so attuned to not seeing many of them that when you get like Laura Palmer, you're like, okay, that makes sense. But everybody else has this backstory, and you're like, okay, I'm going to be less judgmental, and I'm just going to watch how people handle things. I think that's a mature way to kind of take it. That when I was younger, maybe I didn't have the lens or the ability as well as I do now to look at it. Now that's where I think this shines on a rewatch. Now I know you've only watched it once, and I always refer to you as the young 20-something on here too, but I was trying to think of something somewhat current that would kind of match this, and I can't.
No. There's nothing current that goes ahead and does this. I was just realizing something though. The one more thing I want to talk about, and it's not to do with season 1 because I forgot that Garland Briggs doesn't show up in season 1 at all.
I thought he may have Major Garland Briggs, who's Bobby's father. Go ahead. He's tremendous. He's fantastic.
He is fantastic. Absolutely. He's one of the most memorable parts. He has this whole thing because Bobby is having he goes ahead and he has issues because he's a punk, but a lovable punk, unlike Bitch Boy.
Yeah.
But Garland Briggs, he's a stern, respectable figure, and I really thought he was in season 1, at least for an episode. But no, everything that I'm looking at says that he appears in season 2.
Well, maybe so. Maybe so.
On the good half of the season,
One of the last things I'll mention here, just some of the comments here in chat too, because really I was focusing more on season 1, but some of these themes, obviously, if you've watched the entire series, you'll see what these themes are. It's a bit of a different watch than some things, much the same way that Miami Vice back in the 80s, as Artie and I have been looking at reviewing here season 1, because we usually do season 1 and based on that, maybe go back later and do a season 2. Season 1 of Miami Vice is so beautiful. And I'm a born and raised Central Florida native. I've been to Miami. I've been to the Panhandle. I've traveled the world a little bit. I've seen a lot of things in my years on this planet. And I got to tell you, Florida's not a bad place to be in. Disney's not the same Disney as it was that I grew up on. And for better or for worse, you could say that about Miami, not in a bad way, but there's just significant things. And when you watch Miami Vice, I am telling you, that feels like old Florida watching, and I could still feel the heat and the humidity and and everything coming off of you, because that's one thing that Florida has. It has a dry season, which we call winter, which is going on right now. It can still be 85 degrees. But then about March, April, it picks up, and we have it till at least October, November. And you know that you're in Central Florida here in a different part. And when watching Miami Vice, that's the one thing Michael Mann was able to do is you're watching it. Crockett and Tubbs are driving around. They're talking about something. They're chasing some coke dealer because it's all about cocaine. But you really don't care what the thing is they're doing because the plot isn't important. The plot's there to serve its purpose so we can see the characters, see the situations, and feel the vibe. And you always got that in Miami Vice. We talked about that a lot, RDV and I, when we reviewed Thief with James Caan. Of course, he did Collateral, which I think is tremendous. But he has a style, and a lot of people thought that was a bit flashy and not substantive. I disagree because at the end of the day, again, if you just put on Twin Peaks and you're just watching it and you're not listening to what they're saying and just looking at it, it's a show that I think you can get sucked in easy too, not only because of the cinematography, but it's in locations you don't normally see, right? Pacific Northwest. A lot of the shots are static shots where you're just sitting there watching it. You can watch what's going on in the background. And when you see a nice high def release as opposed to what was on TV a while ago, it looks even better to me. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no. That is another thing. This show is directed exceptionally well. I will never forgive David Lynch for having me suffer through Eraserhead, but this comes pretty damn close because this is fantastic. Makes up for it completely.
You know, it's amazing because, like, I think Dennis Villeneuve, or how do you pronounce his name? I think the Dune movies look fantastic. I would watch any movie he's in because it's going to look good. I'm just not getting the emotional vibe out of Dune. And I know some people that have done reviews with us have mentioned, well, it looks great, but it's soulless. And I can understand it. And I think Lynch, a lot of people would describe his stuff as like Hitchcockian. And we've done Hitchcock films here lately. They're like To Catch the Thief, right? Very popular, very, very sexy, good looking movie. Very beautiful to watch. There's nothing wrong with being good looking or having a good looking film. If you're using it to tell a certain story and the story is very important to you, then, that might be something that's more important to some shows than others. I think in this one, you've got a great combination of the music, great combination of the scenes and how things put together. And like I always say again, it's hard to, give a rat's ass about robots if you're watching Westworld because they're fucking robots, right? We build them, we program. I don't care them being sent. And it's hard to care about superheroes and super characters, and that's going to piss some people off in the sense that they're not human. How can you relate to them? You can't give them human things. That's why some of the more mature stuff, seems to be better when it's a bit more real. But what you like is what you like. What you're entertained by is yours. Twin Peaks, I always wondered and was a little bit scared when you and I reviewed it. That's one of the reasons why we revisit things here on the Xtreme Movie Show, is that, does it hold up? Does it have the same value? Is it just a product of its time? There's some older stuff out there that's funny, and I'm watching it now going, yeah, it's not funny. But some of it's still obscenely funny no matter what. Some of it's still really good, and I think Twin Peaks falls into that. I will say this to everybody watching, listening, especially like Aaron, who obviously has got some experience with the shows, seems to be a fan of Twin Peaks. Appreciate you guys coming in. Appreciate everybody letting us know we exist. Our Kevin fan over on Forever Night, the Canadian vampire TV show that's done differently, that you and I will continue picking up here over the next few weeks and finishing off season 1 there. This is a show I highly recommend everybody to watch at least the first season so you can see what the fuss is about. I know a lot of people go out there and they hype, oh, this is great television, it's the best of this and that. But Penguin's the best show I had seen in years, literally. Oh, I enjoyed Hysteria, but I mean, if you like it, I could recommend it. I could tell you what I think they got wrong or not. Stranger Things' quality has gone downhill. Cobra Kai's been reasonably consistent, even if it's probably past its prime at this point. But Twin Peaks, especially if you want to get a sense of what the 80s was like and all that, and maybe it's something that'll draw you in. But in today's short attention span of everybody and social media, I wonder if they can sit through it patiently, because I've noticed things have got shorter. People can't sit through longer things. That might make it a hard watch, I'll be honest. But to me, I am glad it exists. I imagine at some point here over the next few years, we'll probably get into rewatching it again and redoing it now that we have a bigger audience, and as the audience continues to grow. I just want to thank everybody here as we wrap up that you guys picked this. So I'm glad to have gone over it topically, just kind of get into it, not necessarily a deep dive and all that too. But we do have the playlist up. If you go look in the channels, thank RDV publicly for going through reorganizing all that. We had a different agenda earlier on with what we were trying to do with the channel. Now that it's starting to grow a little bit, we're trying to fine tune things up. So there's been a lot of work behind the scenes at. So appreciate everybody showing up, adding to the comment section. Bix, I'm gonna give you the last comments here and any final thoughts that you have about Twin Peaks or just in general and all that too as we close out tonight.
You absolutely won't regret watching the first season of Twin Peaks. Heck, you probably won't regret watching most of the second season of Twin Peaks. This show absolutely, as the kids say, it slaps. It is absolutely something you should be watching. If you haven't yet, that's all I have to say.
Lawrence selling reverse mortgages. Yeah, all those old age commercials. You start getting the AARP stuff in the mail. Yeah, it's a great show. It's really one of those things. It's I think it's one of my favorite, but it's also one of the best, I think, season ones of any television show that's out there. I know it's not a full 20-something episode season like you'd see of television. And argue about all that later. It's not like a 3 or 4 part thing. It's legit. I think it sets up season 2. It's just what do you do in season 2? Eventually, we'll get to Millennium and X-Files and other shows here too. But when we continue going on with other shows here too, we'll put it up there to see what people are interested in. So be looking for the new poll showing up on Tuesday. For Professor Pixel, RDV, and everybody involved here at the Xtreme Movie Show, I'd like to say thanks for everybody watching, listening, letting us know you exist and spending time with us. That's obviously the best thing you can do. This is unscripted. We go live and just start talking and try not to hate watch or get too political or whatever with it. And we appreciate everybody giving us feedback and all that too. We'd like to have fun and we'll expect to continue that with you moving forward here in 2025. Good night now.
Wish I had the end where I could have had David Lynch, Mark Frost to pop up at the end as the credits. Goodbye, everybody.
It's on Paramount right